Manolo, yeah. I was outside a supermarket in Grahamstown the other day, and I happened to look down. There's an area that had been graded to make a car park, and I looked down, and in the rubble, in this open area, I found this, an old horseshoe, just lying there in the dirt, and it's ancient. This, I don't know how old it is or where it came from. I wish I knew. I could imagine that there's got lots of stories to tell. But it reminded me that, going back into the 1800s and the 1700s, we relied on horses and oxen and ox wagons and carriages and horseback for transport and communication. There were no motor cars. By the end of the 1800s, of course, there was trains, but in the early 1800s, nothing like that. And particularly here in the Eastern Cape, there were long distances to cover, and what was then the Cape Colony. And this horseshoe got me thinking about a couple of epic horse rides that took place in the Eastern Cape. And the first one was in 1799, where a British force landed in Algoa Bay, which later on became Port Elizabeth and nowadays Gqeberha. But some British ships landed, forces and supplies in the bay, and a French ship appeared in the bay on about the second or third day there, and a brief naval battle took place in Algoa Bay. And one of the British ships was badly damaged. The French ship was also damaged. But rather than send one of the ships back to Cape Town to inform the authorities in the Cape of what had happened, they sent a young officer on horseback. Now that's a ride of some 700 odd kilometers as the crow flies from Algoa Bay to Cape Town. He took off and unassisted managed to do that in just on 5 days. I mean, that's a remarkable feat in its own. The story about the battle, the naval battle, is one for another day, but a fascinating story nonetheless. But anyway, the second ride was done by Harry Smith at the big outbreak of the Sixth Frontier War. He was in Cape Town. He was commander of the British forces and was dispatched to the frontier to take control. Observing protocol, he first attended the New Year's Eve ball at the governor's residence, and then took off at about 4 o'clock in the morning on New Year's Day. He arrived in Grahamstown 5.5 days later. 5.5 days on horseback. Okay, he changed horses as he went from station to station along the way, but at the same time, he was stopping the dispatch riders, going through the post, writing letters back and forward, and carrying on with his ride. And in 5.5 days, it took him to get to Grahamstown. That's also an amazing feat. And then, of course, the other famous one was Dick King, who in 1842, the small settlement in Port Natal at the time was under siege by the Boers. And Dick King rode on horseback from Durban to Grahamstown to alert the authorities of what was happening there. And that's a journey that took him about 10 days through the most incredibly difficult terrain. And, these are just some of the stories that we have about our history in the Eastern Cape. And I'll share a few more of them in the near future. Cheers.